I know it's been a hot minute since you guys have last seen this, since the last video. As we found out, engine's completely shot in this thing. So we're gonna be going through the process of swapping in a new N51. So I already kind of got a little bit of a jump start, just for the sake of filming. I got the crash bar removed. It's not really that difficult. It's really just removing a bunch of 8mm bolts that align here and as well on the driver's side, and then some 13mm bolts that hold the crash bar in here, and then a whole bunch of T25 Torxes that hold it all in. So with that crash bar out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and keep moving forward. I'm gonna start draining the fluids out of this. So I'm gonna start with radiator, get all the fluids out, and then hopefully I can pull the radiator out and kind of move this to the side, so that way we have full clearance access to the front of the engine and we can start kind of ripping everything apart. All right, with the front clip removed, we have a lot more access to actually get this engine pulled out. So I'm going to try to take as much of the electrical connectors off the engine, and ultimately probably gonna have to remove the intake manifold again, just so I get access to the starter, and then doing that bolt. And hopefully I can get this whole harness flipped over to the side, and we can start getting concerned of how to get the bell housing bolts, the flywheel bolts, and everything like that out of the way. So let's go ahead and get all these electrical connectors undone. Okay, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit just because honestly, with trying to get all the electrical connections disconnected on this, it was going to take a hot minute. And honestly, there's so many in so many different spots that I don't think I'm able to capture all of it on camera. So anyways, got most of it disconnected. I guess I can kind of just give an overview of where most of them were. Obviously, there's a bunch tied into the intake. I went ahead and disconnected the knock sensors on the side of the block. And as well, there's a few in the front, one for the water pump. I think this is like a crank sensor or something up here. I don't remember exactly what that was. Disconnected that one as well. Disconnected all the spark plug wires. I still have to disconnect the grounding straps on the rail here. For the fuel rail, I found it too difficult to trying to get these to disconnect from the actual injector. So instead, I just opted to take the 4 10mm bolts out and then just go ahead and just later on now remove the fuel from the actual rail. So that way, all this can be flipped over. I went ahead and disconnected everything also from by the ECU, just to ensure that when I go to remove this thing out, there's no chance I'm actually ripping any of the wires, because I really don't want to deal with that. So all that stuff is disconnected in that box as well. So at this point, we're just going to be looking to install the crane hook and as well a mount point for my crane here. I'm probably going to use this big hole that's right above the starter, and just run a bolt through it and use my chain. So that way we have a pretty easy way of pulling this thing out. We also, since this is an X-Drive unit, it does have all-wheel drive. So we are going to have to remove the drive shafts from both sides in the front. And as well, hopefully, after everything is said and done, we can start removing out the bell housing bolts to pull this thing out. And also remove the flywheel bolts. So anywho's, I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the next part of me removing out the drive shafts. I struggled with getting this out quite a bit. At first, I thought I could totally just remove it out by having the tie rod removed and the sway bar in link, but that was totally not the case. It wasn't enough to get the axle out. So I did have to end up taking the lower control arm out, which that was quite a struggle, considering I didn't apparently have a 22mm wrench. So make sure you have one. Even though I did get the nut off, this still was very well seized inside the knuckle. So I had to smash the pickle fork pretty hard to get this thing out. And that's not even including trying to get the axle out of the knuckle here, and had to use my air hammer, which that's the first for me as well. So don't believe all the videos out there that show that this is some cut and dry process of you just take this out, it'll just come out easily. You totally may have to end up what I just did. So hopefully get an opportunity to learn something new from worst case scenario rather than assuming everything's just gonna be best case. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove out the driver's side now. Hopefully it shouldn't be as difficult, at least trying to get the axle out. So we will see, and hopefully very, very soon here, we're gonna be pulling this engine. All right, as you can see, I have the engine pulled out now. You can tell this thing has been leaking oil for quite some time, as there's like a ½ inch thick of oil all in the bay. So I'm gonna spend some time to clean this out. So this is my replacement engine. I got this on eBay for about 1,200 bucks. It supposedly has 86,000 miles on it, which is the lowest one I could find. So before I actually go to mount this back in the car, I want to do a lot of the stuff that's normally pain in the ass to do with the engine installed. So I'm going to change out the valve cover gasket. I'm going to be changing out the gasket for the oil filter housing here, the oil pan gasket, the motor mounts. So from that long time lapse of us struggling, finally got the engine in. I can't say I'd exactly recommend doing the exact same way I did of undoing the engine directly from the transmission. I'm gonna kind of leave that up to you, whether or not if this is something you have to do, if that's a route you want to take. It kind of was difficult trying to get this to line up with the transmission, just being that when there's kind of your subframe is directly in front of where the bell housing is of the transmission. So it kind of makes it difficult trying to get a transmission jack or any kind of jack to lift this up, to lift the transmission up to make the engine mate with it pretty easily. That was kind of difficult. It also didn't help. Apparently I'm an idiot and I put the motor mounts in backwards. That you probably totally saw from the video clips. So please don't do that. The motor mounts, the threads actually face this way, not this way. So additionally, what also sucked was trying to get the headers to fit onto the existing exhaust down in that hole. So where the headers collect and go down, they're gonna mate obviously with the pre-existing exhaust. But what makes it difficult trying to make the exhaust kind of fit in there is that there's only a little bit of room you can kind of get the pipes to follow into the path to mate up with the pre-existing exhaust. So that's also another thing too, that the subframe will get in the way while you're trying to work on this. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and do one last time lapse to go ahead and get all this button right back up, so that way we can try to actually start this and make sure I totally didn't get scammed on eBay. And just like where we first saw it in the first ever announcement video of me getting this thing, is right against the side of my shop. So obviously without the front clip, we're going to go ahead and try starting this thing up. I was having a lot of smoke come out the tailpipe. I think it's because the previous engine was ran so hard and it dumped a bunch of coolant and oil into the cats. And so now once I kind of get it heated up, it's going to start smoking like crazy. So either that or I just bought a junk engine from eBay. Could be either or. So let's go ahead and give this thing a quick start and just make sure everything runs, and then we can get super. So we're just going to go ahead and start this thing up, make sure it runs. And then soon we're going to go ahead and be able to finish tying up everything else. All right, come on, baby. Let's get this thing started. Go. Damn, this thing idles like shit. All right, give it some time. It's running like a literal tractor. Nice. I think it's because it's misfiring like absolute crazy. So we're gonna have to try figuring this one out. It is idling fucking terrible, but it is idling. God damn. I don't know if you can see that, the whole fucking door shaking. She's running a little rough, but it does run. As you can see, it does indeed start and run. It runs like shit. So there is gonna be another follow-up video of trying to get this thing to idle and kind of work out fine. There's some weird stuff going on with the exhaust camshaft sensor that I'm gonna have to try figuring out. I will add a couple notes of things that I was doing while I was trying to get this thing to actually idle. I did end up having to change the eccentric shaft sensor, which is this piece right here underneath this valve cover. I was getting some really strange issues trying to get this thing to start, and I just kind of looked around in Beamer code, and I saw that there's some weird outputs coming from this. So I changed this out. Terrible experience. One of the bolts fell down inside the timing chain area, so I actually had to fish it out with a magnet, and thank God I got it out. So have a new one of those in there. I did try changing out as well the camshaft sensors on there as well, and I'm still getting that same issue. Same thing with the solenoids. I will say I got generics from Amazon just because they were one-day shipping. So this totally could be what's wrong. So I'm going to try getting my hands on some OEM ones because I know that gives a lot of weird issues too. But next video is definitely a lot of time spent in Beamer code trying to figure out what sensors are causing this issue of it trying to go into limp mode and it just generally not idling right at all. So oh yeah, I also kind of throw this in here too if you're just coming across this video and you're trying to troubleshoot your no start crank issue on your E90 for any chance. I had this really weird problem also too, that it was cranking but it would not start even though everything was plugged in, and it came down to also being my crank position sensor wasn't working, so I had to swap that out. The way how I knew with that one too as well is that when you try to start the car up, if you don't see the RPMs change on your instrument cluster, or if you don't see it in like a scanner or, you know, Beamer code or whatever, if you don't see the RPMs go up while you're trying to start it, that means your crank position sensor is not actually working correctly. So that's another thing to keep out for too on this. If you found this video informational, educational, or entertaining at all, just from this entire experience, please give the video a like. And if you're interested in more things to be coming up with this E90, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I have some other stuff I got to do. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I am signing out.